Alright guys, such Kremp again. I hope you're doing better and enjoying your day so far with the Esports World Cup on the horizon. Many of the CDL players, including Scrappy, talking about the way the fans think about the Call of Duty players and what it's actually like in reality, suggesting, yeah, we grind this game an awful lot. It's very difficult to play this game and grind as much as they do on the high level, but many of the fans are looking at thinking, damn, save me the tears. You guys get paid to play Call of Duty for a living. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Just to quickly look at this Esports World Cup, everything you've got to know. So the starting time is 3 p.m. local time, I think. Anyway, it's 1 p.m. in the UK, that's all I know. It's 1 p.m. in the UK, it's 8 a.m. on the East Coast, and it's 5 a.m. Pacific time on Thursday. So yeah, get ready for that. Now, the next couple of days, they do start later, so it's not going to be totally obnoxious. But yeah, day one, if you're in the state, is going to be, you're going to be up early to watch the games if you want to do so. $1.8 million. These are the teams. We saw the groups over the last few days. You guys know how it is. But yeah, so they call it groups day one, groups day two, quarterfinals day three, and then playoffs effectively. So semis, and then final, and then also consolidation match, I think, on the championship Sunday as it's going to be. Now, there was a bit of drama again last night on this gun skill list. If you guys saw this the other day, we talked about the top 30 players in terms of pure gun skill. Now, Don and Attach put this list together, and it's very difficult to do this, and it is rather controversial as well. And Don admits, because it was kind of Attach's show, it was Attach's list, he was obviously giving his input as well. He put himself up at 19th, Attach was up at 16th, but he admitted, Don, that, and understandably, I do get it, that when they were doing this list, there were lots of people in the chat who were suggesting, well, you know, they basically got peer pressured to some degree, because Don says he didn't want to put Clay anywhere near this high. He doesn't think Clay should be as high as it, and Clay ended up 14th, which is, you know, like, maybe about right, to be honest. But still, Don was going to do it off pure gunny, so not considering accolades or anything to that effort. Of course, it's a difficult list to come up with because it's like, well, where do you consider the primes of certain players? Like, you know, there might be some players who played for a short amount of time, but they were unreal. Clay, in his day, was a straight shooter. Towards the end of his career, probably not shooting quite as straight when Don played with him. So fair enough, maybe, that Don would want to put him lower than maybe he deserved. I don't know. There's some debate on it, but Don basically said that Clay would not have been that high in his list. He just got peer pressured because people in the chat saying, oh, Aches has got to be there because he's got 2 rings and all this stuff. So it was pretty funny anyway, you know how it is. And he said that Clay's gunny was terrible. I saw it every day for a year. He was getting turned on. He cannot gun me. Clay obviously saw this and decided to hit the replies. And Clay says, don't maybe pull up the stats, Temp. Might have to run the 1v1. Clay then says, if I remember correctly, Donald Tempin dropped a 0.3 on LAN. And then Don thought that was pretty funny because he followed up with this. And apparently this actually did happen, that, you know, Clay was like, damn, Don, you just got fried. And then he looked at the overall stats for the stage and realised that he was still better. So Temp says, damn, you dropped a 0.3 and your stats are still better than mine for the event. I must be awful. Dash Grayster. So it was all going on yesterday. Clay says, at least I was making the right plays. Of course, they teamed together on that Legion team a little while ago. And there was even some further talk about it, right? Parasite says, list was jetpack plus era, you know, bias. Also remember what gunfights were like back in the day when half your shots didn't register, which is also kind of a good point, right? The net code, the hit registration back in the day maybe wasn't quite as good as it is today. And as Clay says, there's way too much nuance. If I rated my own gun skill, BO2, MTAR meta, Ghost I was shooting, took a break for Vector meta, and ASM1 Advanced Warfare, Bal I shot insanely straight, BO3 my Man of War was incredible. Man, the Man of War, what a gun. Infinite Warfare, my K-Bar was maybe top 6-ish, World War II, long barrel bar I fried, FG I couldn't shoot it, so the FG42, guys remember, was the AR at the start of that game that was like a 3-shot kill. It had the like a kind of magazine that came out the side or whatever, and then they GA'd it because it was too strong. Method as you shot it, fine, you were just shooting against me. So anyway, it's what it is, right? Clay's looking back at his crew and saying, well, damn, I did used to shoot pretty straight back in the day. It's just Don played with me when I was, you know, toward the end of my career, so I wasn't looking as good maybe as I used to be looking back in the day. And yeah, Don also replies and says the old shooters definitely get hoed on the list, but it is what it is. There's probably 1% of COD fans that have seen Black Ops 1 event at this point. It is probably less than that, but maybe it is about that, I don't know. But of course, BO1 came out in 2010, right? So you've got to be kind of an OG to have watched much competitive COD in BO1, and obviously watching competitive COD back then, I mean, there was, like, I'm not going to pretend that I was watching a lot of competitive COD. Maybe I saw something, but, you know, I maybe saw some clips or something, but I never was watching watching any of the tournaments when I was like 11 years old. Back then there was no codcaster, you were just watching it from the player perspectives. You'd have to change teams like literally in the spectator mode if you wanted to watch the other team. Like these were the days. And as Cap says, or as Clay says about Cap, Jacob and BO1 might have been the best shot of all time. Proof from COD 4 till Ghost are one of the best shots of all time. Of course, he played with them in Ghosts, Clay and Proofy on that legendary OpTic team. So, you know, talking about some other legends as well. So much history lost, he says. So, a bit of a back and forth there. Always entertaining. Rooker came out with some content as well going into the World Cup. I think, like, it's quality content, really. But they've gone for the this or that. Now, FaZe did this a little while ago. This or that, Modern Warfare. Damn, Kenny actually went to the Modern Warfare side. I guess he did win champs in Modern Warfare. Uplink or Control. The guys can't really choose, but they end up going to the Control side was one of them. And then, what was it in the end? Who went for Control, actually? I need to name and shame them. Okay, Geo went Control over Uplink, okay, whatever. And then AR and SMG, they're pretty much split on their decision here. Online or LAN, I mean, I can't even imagine this is a debate. This is pretty cool. Like, Kenny just straight runs over to the EU events. Of course, he was out there in Madrid right earlier this season, and he got to play London back in the day as well, which was a great event. And he won London back in the day, 2019. So I guess that makes sense. They did Quavo or Kenny as well. You guys remember when he went to Quavo for that year in MW19. So anyway, Rocker coming out with some stuff. They get the team together. Obviously, it's G2, right? They're actually representing G2 even here, as you can see. And look at this, crazy, right? They literally all went to the side of negative for snipers. Like, there wasn't even any hesitation. They all just wanted them out of the game. And they all went raid as well. You know, raid and stand-up is an interesting one. Watching EWC in Riyadh, and of course, they're all going to be out there in Riyadh in the next couple of days as well to try and win this tournament. But in their group, they're going to play OpTic Texas, potentially. They may not, because OpTic play 5 Fears as their first matchup. So they play the amateur team first. Assuming OpTic win, they will then play the winner of G2 and Cloud9, which maybe Cloud9 and maybe G2. It was actually this day, yesterday now, that OpTic won champs for the first time. So, you know, since the Dynasty anyway, Shotzzy got to 2, Kenny got to 2, Dashy got his first, Pred got his first, and now a couple of those guys anyway have moved on one further than just that. It is a question which coach is going to be on the main stage with them, right? As we can see in this image here, Karma's on the right-hand side, JP's on the left. Lots of the coaches, because they are going to have the headsets on for the World Cup, well, there's been some discussion of which coach should they select. Could it be someone for search, someone for hardpoint control? What are they going to do? Some teams it's obvious, because let's say Surge, they have Rambo, so it's going to be Rambo. But a team like Thieves, what are they going to do? Is it going to be Shane or is it going to be Sender? I think it's going to be Sender. That would be my prediction. We'll see what they decide to do. They could change it around. There could be other options. I also wonder what the rules are there. Does it have to be a coach or could it be somebody else? Like, hypothetically, could, you know, OpTic, I know that Hex isn't going to be there, but could OpTic say, all right, Hex, you're taking the coach mic for this map? Or does it have to be the official coach, or can they just, you know, volunteer someone to be the coach for the map, just in case? But not going to be relevant, but you know what I mean anyway. I don't know how strict the rules are going to be on stuff like that, in case it would make for some good content. And I'm sure the listenings are going to be spectacular. I think JP is going to do it for OpTic, but, you know, we'll see about that. I don't know what you guys think about it. Karma in certain instances may be preferable. I think JP will do a good job. You've also got to think about the practice side of it as well. Like, it's difficult to... you know, you've got to stand behind the players the whole time with the headset on, practicing with them, calling out for them. You know, it's obviously difficult on the coaches on the practice side to lock in and do that for hours on hours. I mean, the players do it, and we're going to see what Scraps has to say about that in a second. And I can understand that, you know, some of the coaches, you know, we talked about it on the show last night. The coaches are sitting there, they're watching the scrims, but, you know, what are they doing? They're opening some CS cases on the side. Like, now the coaches have to lock in their practice and in their games. So I think it does change the dynamic a bit. And I think for the coaches' perspective, it's like, well, damn, we're not getting paid any more money, but now we've got to do a hell of a lot more work. Now, this is just for the World Cup. It may change back again when the CDL season starts, but it could be an interesting little test to see if this is actually a good idea when the season gets back underway. And, you know, it's interesting, like, what would JP say? One of the interesting things that Trey mentioned last night, which I hadn't really thought about before from a player's perspective, is that, yeah, Trey was like, and Dom was saying, okay, yeah, maybe you could track some players for us. If we're missing one, just say who it is. But you don't really want the coach to tell you what to do. Oh, rotate, oh, hit ult or whatever. Like, because you feel like as a player that you're going to be able to make that decision better. You don't want the coach to tell you where they're spawning, because what if he gets it wrong and there was a weird spawn all of a sudden? You're like, damn, our coach just said that, and he's costed us or whatever, and that creates a bad environment. Trey said that really what he'd want his coach to do is just gas him up, right? Like, when you go 4 dead, just gas him up. Like, just hype up the boys. And I think what coaches can do very well if they're, let's say if their EQ is very high and they understand their players deeply. Let's say they're playing a big game. One of their players, he started off the map 0-6. He's looking a bit nervous. Maybe he could, maybe the coach drops a little word to gas him up, or he gets a 2-piece and he says nice, and I don't know, like, there's that element as well as a coach where you can help keep your team, like you would in regular sports, keep them on the right page, because in, fast-paced gameplay, that's not really a thing that's possible by your team in real time. The coach can help with those elements. So I think it's more about like the emotional side and the mental side than maybe about like the physical side of actually calling out what's happening in real time in the game. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see the ways that the different coaches approach this. But this was a clip that was doing the rounds over the last couple of days. I think they filmed this going into the World Championship, but they put it out a few days ago, and they sit down with a few of the pros to talk about what do people misunderstand about the pro lifestyle. And, some of these answers I think are pretty good. As Dashy says, you've always got to be watching out for your spot and stuff. But I thought that Scrappy's response was pretty funny, right? Just because, like, Scrap, I don't know if he knew this, but people are just going to clown Scrap for this, right? It is what it is. Because Scrap says, people misunderstand that, how much work we actually put in. It's pretty much 6 days a week that you've got to be there in the office or scrim it every day. Like, the guys work, right? Like, you're paid to be a professional player. Of course, you're going to put in the work. And now 6 days a week is crazy, right? Wow. So, look, I'm not saying that pros don't put in the time, but, like, we also know that it's not like they're grinding on this 24/7, right? And at the same they do play outside of the game as well. And I'm not like denying that it's not easy. I think people do glamorize it a bit. It's like, oh, all you're doing is playing COD. Like, no, it is real work, right? Like, I'm not going to take that away from the players, that what they are putting in is work every day in their scrims. Like, because if you're not concentrating and effectively working, you're not going to get better. And that's, and I agree with that. Like, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's not all just pure fun that the players are having. But I think most of the fans kind of get that. But what they also get is that, you're working a 40-hour week, you're working a 9 to 5. So are the pros. It's not like, they shouldn't. Sometimes they come out and say, oh, life is so hard. It's like, well, I'm not really sure that it is. Most people are doing the same, if not more.
One thing people misunderstand about the pro lifestyle is like how much work we actually put into this. It's pretty much 6 days a week that you have to be there in office or scrimming every day.
It's not as glamorous as it looks, and some days, well, most days feel the same.
Kind of one of those things that if you don't put in the extra hours, then somebody else is, and they're gonna eventually either be better than you or take your spot. So there's just always somebody after your spot. So I'd probably just say the amount of hours you have to put in.
I don't know, the fact that you probably watch a lot more than you end up playing, or you watch a pretty equivalent time to the time that you're actually playing in game.
The grind, the hard work. I think people just see like matches, but I think people like forget about like the practice and stuff like that. So I would say the grind.
But yeah, it's a fun life.
Just to close out the video with a couple of interesting statistics. Grand finals of every active player in the league. Grand finals KD. Slasher tops the lot, 1.17. Look, I'm not going to say that Slasher gets underrated, but I think his career generally does. People don't tend to like Slasher that much, and obviously nowadays, maybe he's not the player that he used to be, and that's totally fair enough. But you've got to put some respect on Slasher's name, because he was always a big game player, and on LAN in a grand finals he would always deliver. And in his career he's got a 1.17 in 19. He's played 19 grand finals and he's got a 1.17. Like, that is tippable, or whatever you say. Then you've got Awakening. Obviously some of these guys have smaller sample sizes. HyDra's now been in 11 of them. He's got a 1.13, which is very commendable, right? Okay, you're expecting HyDra to have a 1.2 because he's that guy. But to have a 1.13 in finals against the other best team in the tournament, that is very impressive. Insight as well has had a great result in the finals that he's played. It is interesting when you start to look at players like Cell, right? Just because, look, a 1.1 over 25 finals is still very tippable, right? But, he's often dropping a 1.3 elsewhere. Shotzzy's played 14 finals with a 1.07, Simp at a 1.04, Dashy's played 9 finals with a 1.01. So anyway, you see the numbers pretty interesting. Scrap at a 1.06. What people might want to know though is who are the worst. So, you know, obviously some of these guys have smaller sample sizes, but I'll just share this list for you guys to have a little feast on which players you might want to roast or might want to appreciate. I think the interesting one for many is going to be Ghosty here. He's played 6 finals, averaging a 0.83. There's obviously going to be some talk about that if that story continues for Thieves. So very much interested in your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.